She chased after her ex's money, lost every penny in a scam, and now wants the home I worked so hard to build. Let me start at the beginning. I, 39M, met Anita, 36F, when I was in my early 20s. We attended the same university. She was studying art history, and I was in architecture. We ran in similar circles because the architecture and art students often collaborated on projects, exhibitions, and social mixers. Anita was vivacious, charming, and radiantly confident in ways that I never was. She was the type of person everyone gravitated toward. I liked her immediately back then. I was far from wealthy. My family wasn't poor, but I wasn't sitting on a trust fund or inheritance. I always planned to make my own way in life. I took a job at a small architectural firm right out of college and started working my way up. Anita, however, was different. She was always talking about the big dreams she had: trips abroad, posh apartments, expensive dinners. She envisioned a lifestyle that was, frankly, out of my budget at the time. But I admired her ambition. I mistook her materialistic leanings for simple dreams of comfort and security. After all, who doesn't want nice things? Our relationship was good at first. We dated for a few years, and I worked hard, taking on freelance projects to supplement my income. Anita got a job as a gallery assistant, which didn't pay much, but she assured me it was just a stepping stone. When I proposed, I did it with a modest ring. Nothing extravagant, but something I could afford without going into debt. She said yes, though I noticed a flicker of disappointment in her eyes. I tried to ignore it. We got married shortly after. In the early days of our marriage, I worked longer hours to build our future. At that point, I had hopes of starting my own firm one day. Anita, to her credit, supported me on the surface. She'd tell her friends how proud she was of me, how hardworking I was. But behind closed doors, she often brought up the lifestyles of her wealthier peers. People we knew from university who married rich or had lucrative careers in finance. Our first apartment was a small rental in a not-so-fancy part of town. It was clean, safe, and decent, but definitely not a penthouse. Anita complained regularly, and I felt guilty, so I put my head down and worked harder. Eventually, I got a promotion at the architectural firm, and we moved into a slightly nicer place. We bought a small condo a few years later. I thought this would make Anita happy. She seemed content for a while, but it never lasted. Things started changing more dramatically after I started my own firm about 6 years into our marriage. I'd built enough connections and saved enough money to launch a small architectural studio focusing on sustainable, boutique projects. It was a slow start, but over time, it picked up. I brought in a few smaller clients, worked insane hours, and made sacrifices: less sleep, almost no weekends. Anita began to enjoy the fruits of my labor. Nicer clothes, better restaurants, invitations to exclusive art shows where I'd network with potential clients. I thought we were in a good place around this time. However, Anita began reconnecting with an old boyfriend from university. Let's call him Jeremy. Jeremy was an investment banker, and from what I could tell, he was very successful. Or at least that's the image he projected. He drove fancy cars, traveled extensively, and loved to brag about his accomplishments. Anita talked about him more and more, usually starting with some harmless anecdote, but inevitably mentioning his financial success. She claimed it was all innocent nostalgia, just old friends catching up. I was skeptical but also busy. Maybe I was naive, but I didn't think Anita would betray me, even if she did envy the lifestyle of someone like Jeremy. It got harder to ignore the signs. Anita started dressing more provocatively, going out without me more often, claiming these were networking events or gallery socials I wouldn't be interested in. She spent more and more weekends with the girls, though I rarely saw any evidence of actual female friends on her social media. Instead, I'd catch glimpses of fancy restaurants and VIP lounges that none of her supposed gallery assistant friends could afford. Then came the day Anita asked for a divorce. I was blindsided. We were sitting in the living room of the condo we'd purchased together. I'd spent months renovating myself. I'd done the kitchen cabinets by hand, installed built-in shelves in the living room, and improved the resale value significantly. It was a home I was proud of, and it represented years of hard work. She told me that she couldn't see a future with me and that she felt trapped in mediocrity. I'll never forget how she looked at me as though I was just another piece of outdated furniture. I was devastated that I tried to talk it out. I asked if she wanted counseling, if there was something I could do. Her response chilled me. I want a life that matches my dreams, and you're holding me back. That was it. No empathy, no regret. It was as if the years we'd spent together, the sacrifices I'd made, and the love I'd given meant nothing. She moved out quickly, and the divorce process started shortly after. The divorce was ugly, mostly because Anita tried to get as much from me as possible. At this point, my architectural firm was doing decently well, and our condo had appreciated in value. Anita's lawyer argued for spousal support, even though she was perfectly capable of working. We had no children, so at least that wasn't part of the equation. After a lengthy and stressful legal battle, she ended up with a settlement that, to me, felt overly generous. She got a lump sum that took a good chunk out of my savings, as well as some smaller assets. I got to keep the condo and my firm, which I considered non-negotiable. The condo was where I lived, and my firm was my livelihood. I would rather have fought to the bitter end than give those up. It took me a while to get over the emotional toll of this. I worked harder than ever, partly to distract myself. Over the next few years, I built my firm into something successful and reputable. We started getting larger projects, boutique hotels, eco-friendly office spaces, and I even won a few awards. I was proud of myself and glad I'd stood my ground on the condo and the business. Meanwhile, I heard through mutual acquaintances that Anita had run off to be with Jeremy. Apparently, he'd promised her a lifestyle I never could. Yachts, penthouse apartments, high-end vacations. I guess that's what she thought she wanted. I lost track of Anita for a while. Life moved on. I had brief relationships with other women and even considered marriage again. But I was cautious. My trust had been shattered, and I focused on building a future on my own terms. A few years passed. Enough time that Anita was more of a memory than a lingering wound. I was content if not overjoyed, and I had a circle of good friends, a beautiful home I kept upgrading, and a firm that employed some talented, dedicated people. Then, out of the blue, Anita showed up at my office. I remember the day clearly. I got a call from reception. "There's a woman here to see you. She says she's an old friend." I was puzzled but told them to send her up. The elevator doors opened, and there she was, older, yes, but still striking. Yet something was off. Her posture was tense, her eyes darted nervously, and she dressed nicely but not as extravagantly as before. She greeted me with a hesitant smile, as if expecting me to hug her. I did not. I stood behind my desk, arms folded. She started talking about how much she'd missed me and how she'd been following my career. She congratulated me on my success, feigning pride. I asked her what she wanted. She paused, clearly taken aback by my bluntness. She started crying, softly at first, then more dramatically. It was the kind of performance I remembered from our marriage, the tears that always seemed to appear when she needed something. I waited. Eventually, the story came out in fragments. She'd left with Jeremy, as I knew, and they'd had a whirlwind life for a year or so, traveling to Europe, staying in luxury hotels, buying expensive art. But then Jeremy got involved in some shady investment opportunities. Long story short, it was a scam. He lost everything. The penthouse? Sold to cover debts. The yacht? Repossessed. The artwork? Seized by authorities. Jeremy had fled the country or gone into hiding, and Anita found herself penniless. With no savings of her own, she'd never bothered to build a career. She was stuck. Now she was back in town, couch surfing with some distant acquaintances, trying to figure out her next move. She looked at me with tear-filled eyes and said, "I know I made mistakes, but I still love you. Can you ever forgive me?" I was stunned. The audacity. After leaving me for a wealthier man and draining a chunk of my savings in the divorce, she now had the nerve to ask me for forgiveness. And, I suspected, for money or a place to stay. I asked her point-blank what she wanted. She said she wanted to come home. Home, as if it were still hers. She meant the condo I had worked so hard to pay off and improve. She painted a picture. "We built that life together. You always wanted me in that home. It's where we had so many memories." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She was all but demanding that I allow her to move back in. She talked about how sorry she was for chasing the wrong dream, how she realized that money wasn't everything. She insisted that she had grown, that she could be a partner worthy of me now. I told her no calmly, but firmly. I explained that the home was mine, legally and morally. I reminded her that she had left me for someone else's wallet, not only wounding me but also making it clear that I was never enough. I also reminded her that we had settled the divorce, that she had taken a large sum of my hard-earned money, and that I owed her nothing now. She wept and tried to guilt-trip me, saying how I was always the kinder one and how I'd changed. In that moment, I realized I truly had changed. I was no longer the lovesick young man who would do anything to please her. I had grown stronger, more self-respecting. When she saw that tears and pleas weren't working, she tried another tactic: anger. She accused me of becoming selfish and cold. She pointed to my success and said, "You don't understand what it's like to have nothing." I laughed, not mockingly, but in disbelief. I reminded her that when we were starting out, I had far less than I do now. I worked day and night to build what I have. I earned every bit of it. The difference was I never abandoned someone I claimed to love for quick riches. She left in a fury that day, yelling something incoherent as she stormed out. I thought that was the end of it, but it wasn't. A week later, I got a letter from her lawyer. She was, unbelievably, threatening to sue me. The letter stated that she believed she had a right to some of the equity in the condo because we had purchased it during our marriage. Of course, this completely ignored the fact that the terms of our divorce had already settled property matters years ago. The condo had been awarded to me outright, and she had taken a lump sum in exchange. All legally binding. Passed the letter to my attorney, who almost burst out laughing. He told me not to worry. The law was clearly on my side. Still, the legal letter was an annoyance, another wave of stress I didn't need. I had projects to manage and deadlines to meet, and I didn't want to waste time on this nonsense. My attorney drafted a firm response, reminding her that the divorce settlement had been final and that she had no claim to the property. We sent it off. Not long after, I got a series of frantic texts and voicemails from Anita. She said that if I wouldn't let her move in, could I at least lend her some money so she could get back on her feet? She promised to pay it back once she found a job. I knew better than to trust her promises. There was always an excuse, always a story. She had never had a stable career, and by now, her references and professional network had likely dried up. She was desperate, and I get that desperation can drive people to do crazy things. But I wasn't about to shoulder the cost of her bad decisions, especially after she'd shown herself willing to drag me back into court over it. I sent her a single text: "Do not contact me again except through my lawyer." That was it. She responded with a barrage of texts. "How can you be so heartless? You were never like this. I made a mistake. Can't you forgive me?" I didn't reply. I blocked her number for a few weeks. Things quieted down. I focused on work, spent time with friends, and enjoyed the sense of peace that came from standing my ground. But then Anita showed up at my condo building. I live in a secure building, and the front desk called me to say there was a woman downstairs claiming to be my wife and demanding to be let up. I told them to keep her there. I came downstairs to the lobby and found her crying loudly, causing a scene. Neighbors were passing by, and I knew I had to be careful. I calmly told her that she needed to leave, that we were divorced, and that if she continued to harass me, I'd involve the authorities. She yelled something about how I'd regret this, how I wasn't the man she knew. I just stared at her until she left. I wish I could say that was the last of it, but Anita found even more creative ways to try to guilt me. She wrote me a long email. Somehow it slipped through my spam filters, where she waxed poetic about our early days of love, how we struggled but still had each other. She conveniently left out how she had abandoned that love for someone else's bank account. She begged me to be understanding, claiming that Jeremy had hypnotized her with false promises and that she was as much a victim as anyone else. I didn't respond. I forwarded the email to my lawyer, just for documentation. I also made sure to have a conversation with my building's security to ensure Anita couldn't harass me at home. I changed my privacy settings on social media and asked my friends not to share information about my whereabouts or personal life. It felt like I was locking down my life against someone who used to be my partner, and that's a bitter feeling. Meanwhile, I learned through a mutual acquaintance, someone who still occasionally crosses paths with Anita, that she was bouncing around cheap rentals and might even have resorted to staying in motels. Jeremy was gone, and apparently, he'd left her with a mountain of debts. The acquaintance told me Anita had tried to get a job at a gallery and was turned down due to poor references, probably from her old job where she burned bridges, and a noticeable lack of experience doing anything beyond planning high-end parties. She was drifting in a downward spiral, and although I'm not heartless, I couldn't bring myself to feel sorry for her. She made her bed. I've thought a lot about this whole situation. Some part of me wonders if I did love Anita once, truly love her, and if she loved me in return, or if I was always just the stepping stone to something richer and flashier. It's hard to admit, but I think the signs were always there. She was never satisfied, always looking for a bigger fish. I just never thought she'd be so cold as to leave me when I was working so hard for us. But at least I learned something about myself. I have boundaries now. I know my worth. I don't owe her a second chance. I don't owe her a roof over her head. And I definitely don't owe her my hard-earned property. If there's any moral to this story, it's that kindness and love can't be transactional. I gave my love and sweat willingly, believing it was a partnership. She saw it as a stepping stone. When a better opportunity came along, she leapt at it, leaving me behind. That ended in disaster for her. Now she wants the stable life I built, alone, mind you, after she left. But I'm no longer someone she can manipulate. I'm currently in a relationship with a woman I've been seeing for over a year. Let's call her Naomi. She's empathetic, hardworking, and supportive. We met at an industry conference. She works in sustainable design as well, and from the start, it's been a partnership of equals. We push each other to be better, and we celebrate each other's successes. Naomi knows about Anita, at least the broad strokes, and respects my privacy on the matter. She's made it clear that she has no interest in my money beyond what it represents, my hard work and my passion for design. She has her own successes and doesn't need me to fund her dreams. I haven't told Naomi about this latest round of drama in much detail. Maybe I will at some point. Right now, I'm protecting my peace and making sure that Anita's desperate attempts don't cause unnecessary stress in my current life. I'm prepared to take legal action if Anita tries anything else, but for now, I'm hoping she's realizing that this won't work. For those who might wonder, no, I have no plans to help Anita financially. I gave her more than she deserved in the divorce settlement. I tried to be the best partner I could be, and she threw it back in my face. Just because her new life didn't work out doesn't mean she's entitled to come back into mine. Actions have consequences, and unfortunately for her, the consequence of leaving me for money is that when that money dries up, she's on her own. I've considered therapy to fully process my lingering feelings. The anger, the hurt, the sense of betrayal, they left scars. Even though I'm in a better place now, these recent attempts by Anita to insert herself back into my life reopened some old wounds. Therapy might help solidify my boundaries and ensure I'm making decisions that are healthy for me. One question that haunts me is, could she have genuinely changed? Could losing everything have taught her a lesson about what really matters? Even if that's true, it doesn't obligate me to welcome her back. People can change after hitting rock bottom, but that doesn't undo the harm they've caused. It's not my responsibility to provide her with a safety net just because we share a past. I'm thankful I had a good lawyer during the divorce. Without that, she might have managed to secure some claim on the condo or force me into a less favorable financial position. The fact that she's trying to challenge that settlement now is laughable, but it also shows how desperate she's become. If she's learned anything, maybe it's that chasing after superficial wealth is a dangerous game. Jeremy was a con artist, or at least involved in major financial fraud, and Anita got caught in the fallout. She put all her eggs in one basket, his wallet, and when that vanished, she had no backup plan. I can't say I feel sorry for her, but I do find it sad. She had talent, at least a spark of creativity and charm, that could have been put to better use. Instead, she spent years trying to skip the line to a lavish lifestyle. As for me, I'm determined to continue building a life that is meaningful. My firm has projects lined up for the next 2 years, and we're exploring some really innovative sustainable materials. I'm planning a trip with Naomi to an eco-resort that I helped design. We'll be staying there as guests for a week. It feels good to enjoy the fruits of my labor with someone who appreciates the journey as much as the destination. I guess I'm posting this here because I'm curious if anyone else has faced a similar situation. An ex who tries to come back after you've moved on, after they've burned bridges. How did you handle it? Did you ever feel guilty for not helping them? Do you think I should tell Naomi about all the recent drama just to be transparent? Or is it better to wait until Anita's attempts have fully subsided? For now, I'm standing firm. Anita made her choice years ago. She placed her bets on someone else, chasing a shiny, glamorous life that wasn't real. She lost, and now she wants a piece of what I've built with my own two hands. She's not getting it. The home is mine, legally, financially, emotionally. It represents not just material success, but the personal growth, the resilience, and the lessons learned from surviving betrayal and heartbreak. I'm done being her backup plan. I wish her well in a distant sort of way. I hope she finds a path forward that doesn't involve trying to swindle me out of what I've rightfully earned. But that's not my problem anymore. Thanks for reading if you made it this far. Sorry this turned into such a long saga, but it feels good to put it into words. Sometimes narrating the whole ordeal clarifies your thoughts and reminds you why you're making the decisions you are. And right now, I'm at peace with my decision. She chased after her ex's money, lost every penny in a scam, and now wants the home I worked so hard to build. Not gonna happen.